Is back. Iconic moment. Maybe not as iconic as his Espressino video, but I digress. Stay on track here. I'm Adrian, welcome to Rabona TV, and I'll make this quick. We're looking at the matches, we're analyzing how the teams have been playing lately, changes in the squad, and everything else. And yes, though it is secondary, I will provide my picks for you guys as well. Let's do this. AC Milan and Tottenham. I think there is one image in particular that comes to mind when people think of these two teams squaring up to each other, and that's of course Gattuso squaring up to Joe Jordan. Two nasty bastards going head to head back in 2011. I mean, seriously, I know Gattuso was tough, but would you want to mess with this dude? He was nicknamed Jaws back in his playing days. Played for Milan at one time too, actually, funnily enough. But anyway, that was the one time that Milan and Tottenham had faced each other in competitive matches, of course. They've also met in the iconic football competition, the Audi Cup, as well. As far as form goes, well, Tottenham has had their ups and downs this season, every season. AC Milan is a club that has flirted with disaster recently. They are absolutely coming into this second best, as there are major issues with their defending, and especially in goal, as Tatarusanu has really failed to impress. In fact, he's drawn the ire of plenty of Milan supporters, many putting all the blame on him. Overly harsh maybe in my opinion, as it takes a team to win and a team to lose, and you also have to question why the opponents are getting these kinds of golden opportunities to begin with, but I agree as well. He has been dreadful at times when it comes to making saves that would be otherwise fairly routine for most goalkeepers. What a difference a shot stopper like Mike Maignan made for them last season, eh? On top of that, they've had their fair share of injuries to contend with, like many teams this season, and it keeps getting worse. Benacer is just getting back from injury. Zlatan has been gone all season. He might come back soon. The aforementioned Maignan could be back for the second leg of this. Tomori is returning from an injury now. Both of their right back options in Dest and Florenzi have been dealing with injuries from time to time. Calabria has filled in, but he hasn't been at his best, has he? Nor has the attack, as they have struggled greatly. They weren't exactly free scoring last season. They relied upon their defensive record for their success, but it's fair to say the drop-off has been noticeable lately for Milan in all areas of the pitch. Tottenham, on the other hand, have been better under Conte than recent managers at least. They had their own issues themselves, but when you look at their form and their place in the table, it's a pretty accurate depiction of their season. The 5th best team in England, no higher than that, no lower than that, and you never know what you will get with Tottenham, do you? First things first, they have solved their right back issue, in my opinion at least. Gone are the days of Emerson Royal or Matt Doherty, and in steps Pedro Porro. He was fantastic for Sporting and adds a ton of quality down that right side. Theo Hernandez will have to be disciplined in not giving him too much room, and Theo hasn't been super fantastic since returning from the World Cup. The guy's tired, you know? As for Tottenham's attack, you can absolutely never sleep on Harry Kane and Heung-min Son. Each of them have been contributing recently, and with Richarlison and Danjuma waiting in the wings, as well as Dejan Kulusevski returning, and he too is contributing, Tottenham's attack is looking better. They've had some massive matches lately against City and Arsenal, and those have been the only matches they have lost, but they also defeated City 1-0 this past weekend, and in turn Harry Kane became the outright top scorer for Tottenham. So the mood surrounding them will be pretty high, I would imagine. I think AC Milan's difficulties in defense and the Mike Maignan-sized hole in goal will give Tottenham the edge here, plus the overall disparity in the confidence between the two sides at the moment. For me, Tottenham will go through, but as I always say, hopefully I'm surprised, because that's what makes football fun. Surprises. And life, for the most part. PSG versus Bayern Munich, another one of those Champions League matchups that comes along almost annually, it feels like. I mean, I guess when you're in a 32-team competition and both of you make it to the final 16 all the time, then chances are high that you'll meet eventually, if not in the group stage, then later on. But both sides have had a bit of a strange season, almost moving in opposite directions in some ways, and I'm not just talking about results, but overall play. PSG started the season looking very serious, but after ending up behind Benfica in the standings, they found themselves eligible to be drawn against all of the big first place teams in the competition, and so here we are, PSG versus Bayern Munich. Bayern, on the other hand, have had a topsy-turvy season by their own standards domestically, and I'm warning you now, prepare to gasp. Their lead in the Bundesliga is only 1 point. Yes, they drew 3 matches in a row, allowing the likes of Union Berlin and Borussia Dortmund to catch up, not to mention RB Leipzig, who are looking good, but more on them later, and Eintracht Frankfurt, they were sort of hovering around. Bayern, as mentioned, haven't been at their flying best in 2023, but they have seemingly turned the corner now after scoring 8 goals in 2 matches. There's the Bayern we know, eh? First defeating Mainz 4-0 away, then defeating the very, very difficult Wolfsburg 4-2 away. The signing of João Cancel provides further quality down the right flank, a place they have been hurting for some time, as they now boast perhaps the best pairing in the world, maybe. Alphonso Davies down the left, João Cancel down the right. The Portuguese already has 2 assists in 2 matches, so a good start for him. On top of this, while Manuel Neuer may be out for the season and there is some drama sort of brewing behind the scenes there, Jan Sommer is absolutely a great signing as he is a top shot stopper, limited with the ball at his feet compared to Neuer and the sweeping Neuer offers, but I mean, everyone is limited compared to Neuer in that respect, right? In the attack, no worries as Musiala, Coman, Sané and Choupo-Moting have all been scoring recently. As for PSG, like I said, they started the season looking spooky, but from one, controversy, if you want to call it that, surrounding Mbappe and Neymar, to putting that aside and playing well, to now struggling to get good results in France under Galtier, it's really hard to understand what you're going to get with PSG. But hasn't that always sort of been the case with them? When they are fully healthy and in form, they have the quality to terrify anyone. But the big issue is that they are so rarely in that sort of, rare form. Like Benfica, PSG suffered their first loss of the season upon returning from the World Cup break as they lost to title contenders Lens 3-1 at the beginning of January and have since lost to Rennes and drawn Reims. The most difficult name in the world to pronounce. I swear, I'm not a native speaker of French at all, but having lived in Montreal for a while, I at least understand what words are supposed to sound like in French, and this one boggles my mind. Looks like Reims, pronounced like Reims. When you look it up on Forvo, it's crazy. By the way, if you don't know Forvo already, check it out. It will help you, it has native speakers pronouncing things for you. Not an ad, just a shout out. Anyway, so while PSG are still winning more games than they are losing and drawing, there are major complaints in the style of play that Galtier is rolling out for PSG. Mbappe will likely be out for the first leg, and if he does return, he may not be fully fit, and that could be a big difference maker. If Bayern get a good result away to PSG, which I think they just might, then this tie is over after the first leg, in my opinion. Who knows what you'll get with PSG, but my money is on this ever-improving Bayern side, who are just so good in the Champions League. Benfica versus Club Brugge, the most slandered match of all. Hey man, respect Benfica Brugge. So the Benfica Brew Derby, as I'm calling it now, 2 teams that I would say surprised most viewers during this Champions League campaign, as we had Club Brugge become the first team to cement their place in the round of 16 as they won their first 3 matches against Leverkusen, FC Porto, and Atletico Madrid, then sealed their qualification with a 0-0 draw away to Atletico, cementing their place in the round of 16 without conceding 1 goal. 0 goals conceded. They did, however, lose 4-0 at home against Porto in their 5th match, and then drew 0-0 away to Leverkusen, thus finishing in 2nd in their group. That said, they were brilliant in those first 3 matches, 4th also, showing that they can defend well. Shout out Simon Mignolet and Hufkens for organizing that defense. But Karl Hufkens is gone now, as Brugge's domestic form has really slipped, and he has been replaced with who? None but the handsome Scott Parker, a man yet to truly find his feet in management, in my opinion. Fulham, Bournemouth, Club Brugge. After taking over in early January, they've been just as dreadful. Well, I mean, he's stopped the bleeding in a sense, as since their 3-1 loss to Genk in this opening match, they have 4 draws and 1 win, but when they were 12 points behind upon sacking Hufkens, they now sit 21 points off of first following that string of draws. Their only win against a team in the relegation zone, Zulte Waregem. Not the greatest of form at the moment, but should Vanaken and Jutgla find their Champions League form once again, they can always provide difficulty for their opponents. In fact, going forward is where you would expect Brugge to hurt you, but at the moment, they are struggling to get results over the line. As mentioned, still, they are not a team to be taken lightly, as their Champions League results have shown. SL Benfica have 1 loss this season, 5 draws, and the rest are all wins, as Roger Schmidt has absolutely revolutionized this team. The loss of Enzo Fernandez is huge. Nobody will deny that fact, and in fact, anyone who says that it doesn't matter is probably still bitter that he's gone, to be honest. That's a world-class talent gone. But all that said, Roger Schmidt, He's a manager that has improved players to a degree that we never expected at Benfica, and João Mario is the perfect example of this. Chiquinho's next. He went from a sometimes frustrating figure, João Mario that is, in his first season at Benfica, to becoming the heart of this team at this point. Benfica's only loss of the season was a disastrous match against Brugge, in which they lost 3-0 away, but since then, they have gone on an absolute tear and resemble their form from before the World Cup, really. Since that loss, they have won 6 and drawn once, conceding just 2 goals along the way, both coming in that draw against Sporting. 6 wins, 6 clean sheets, 2 consecutive 3-0 wins without Enzo in the side, as they have seemingly left him in the past already. So the defense is looking good, clearly, as we now have options back there since everyone is fit, but don't expect anyone to dislodge Otamendi or Antonio Silva at the center. Their partnership has been great. The attack also has found itself recently, even without Gonçalo Ramos for the last couple of matches. Guys like João Mario have stepped up, while Orsnes playing on the wing doesn't move me. I prefer him in midfield, but he has done a great job. There's been some great performances from him lately, but I'm waiting to see Schjelderup, our 18-year-old Norwegian, to really grab that left wing and make it his own in the future. He played his first match for Benfica B this past weekend. Watch out. Anyway, with all of the trouble that Brugge has had lately and all of the good form that Benfica has, I forgot to mention Rafa will be back as well, I think. That's huge. But I expect Benfica to take care of business against Brugge. Brugge's European form is the only variable, but Benfica, for me, the most likely to advance. The new look Chelsea taking on Borussia Dortmund, who are steadily finding some form, something Chelsea will hope to do now that they have all of these new guys involved. At this point, I don't need to yammer on about all of the signings they have made because no doubt you will know them all by now. However, it is pertinent to know that all of the signings made, Potter was only able to register 3 players for their Champions League squad. In the end, he chose Fernandes, Mudryk, and the somewhat surprising inclusion of João Felix. It was always going to be between Felix and Badiashile, as the center back has looked decent under Potter since his arrival, but in the end, Potter must have seen how Felix can help revolutionize their attack, so he went with him. I feel for Badiashile, man, and I'll feel even worse for him should Chelsea not end up signing João Felix in the summer, but hey, it's also understandable why Potter went with him rather than Badiashile, I guess. Enzo Fernandez could certainly be the player that lifts this side up, as he has the football IQ and the technique to provide that starving front line with the service that they have been lacking. And I'm not just talking about crosses. He can do those greatly as well, but through balls, switches of play, the amount of runs that front line makes that went unnoticed in the past was brutal. They finally have a big brain in the midfield, and the positive connotation of big brain there. As for Borussia Dortmund, they have Sebastian Haller back in their ranks, and he has been playing well for them since his return. As far as market moves, they haven't done anything compared to Chelsea. Nobody has, to be fair, as they brought in right back Julian Ryerson as a depth option in the right back position, obviously, as well as a young Belgian winger for the future, Julien Duranville. Remember the name. After a not so great start to the season under Terzic, Borussia Dortmund have been great since returning to action in mid-January. From 4 Bundesliga matches, they have won every single one, and as mentioned, with guys like Haller starting to find form, on top of Adeyemi finally breaking his duck and finding a consistent goal-scoring touch, Giovanni Reina, the super sub who seemingly scores whenever he comes onto the pitch, as well as a more assured back line with Schlotterbeck in the picture. I'm feeling a lot better about Dortmund these days. They are looking pretty good. Of course, the defensive collapse has sort of been a hallmark of the club for the last couple of years, but there's reason to be more optimistic with Özcan in front of that back line and Kobel continuing to develop into a strong shot stopper for Dortmund. I feel like Chelsea have the right pieces both in player personnel and in the manager, probably, but they need to put those pieces into place, and they haven't done so yet. I think that the first leg will be a bridge too far for them to get it together, going away to Dortmund on the 15th, that's tough, and the second leg will be too little too late. Dortmund for me, but with the talent Chelsea boasts, it's the same as PSG. If it all clicks into gear, watch out for them. Liverpool and Real Madrid, last year's finalists, as well as finalists from 5 years ago with the now infamous Karius concussion match. Real Madrid are a club that just seems to have Liverpool's number. In the last 6 meetings, Liverpool don't have a single win against them. In fact, you have to go all the way back to 2009 for the last time Liverpool beat Real Madrid. The record, it ain't good from a Liverpool perspective. And the form, it ain't good. well, Real Madrid isn't spectacular either, but we'll get to them in a moment. For Liverpool, they are terrible at the moment, as they look like a team that doesn't know what the plan is. We haven't seen Klopp's side look this bad, in my opinion, as this looks even worse than the season where Van Dijk was out for the entirety of it, with every other center back. There are definitely similarities, however, as Van Dijk is out once again, and they have also lost two integral pieces to the attack, Jota and Luis Diaz, due back toward the end of the month though. If all goes well, they might play in the second leg. They aren't scoring, they are getting scored against often when it comes to how they have been playing in the first half of matches. They consistently concede first, and now they are conceding early as well. As far as the attack goes, I'm glad to see that Klopp finally put Gakpo on the wing and Nunez through the middle. More reps with that setup are needed, while the midfield is still a large area of concern along with the center back position. Matip and Gomez haven't looked great. As for Real Madrid, they've definitely had a hangover after what was a brilliant campaign under Ancelotti last season, winning both the La Liga and the Champions League with a Ballon d'Or worthy performance from Karim Benzema throughout. On top of this, much of their success was down to the great form that Vinny Jr. was in. And with Benzema not being there, coupled with a loss of form from Vinny Jr., Real Madrid have struggled going forward at times. Now, they've also had to deal with losing Casemiro, which cannot be understated, as we have seen the importance he has had for Manchester United, the winning mentality he brings along with his class on the pitch. All credit to Tchouaméni, as he is the future, but I mean, Casemiro was a blow, no doubt about it. Fede Valverde also was a big part of Real Madrid's great form in the first part of the season, as the Uruguayan was flying. He couldn't stop scoring. Toni Kroos even labeled him as a top 3 midfielder in the world or something on Twitter. But anyway, those powers have escaped Valverde recently. The thing is, with these two teams, neither one of them are at the peak of their powers, whether through lengthy injuries or losses of form, with neither manager making notable changes to try and fix things. And with Real Madrid heading to the Club World Cup without Courtois and Benzema, we'll see what kind of form they will be in upon their return. Despite issues with both sides, history is certainly on Real Madrid's side as well, and I see them advancing ahead of Liverpool. Eintracht Frankfurt versus Napoli is up next. Eintracht Frankfurt are one of the feel-good stories of this campaign, and perhaps Mario Götze could be the poster boy of that feel-good story, given the feel-good story he is, the trials and tribulations he has gone through and how he has revitalized his career of late. He may not get the goals or the final pass, but he's integral to Frankfurt's build-up, and perhaps Randal Kolo Muani could also be the poster boy of Eintracht Frankfurt, as you would be hard-pressed to find a player whose stock has increased more than Muani's monumental rate this season. Maybe Enzo Fernandez. And Mudryk too. But I mean, the point remains. Kolo Muani gives Henry vibes. He nearly won the World Cup for France as well, if it wasn't for Emi Martinez, and he has scored 14. Anyway, all of that aside, there's also Kamada to contend with in the attack, who also contributed greatly in helping Frankfurt to second place behind Tottenham in their group. Domestically, Frankfurt was one of the teams that was consistently pushing Bayern Munich prior to Union Berlin finding their form once again. Part of their success has been down to what we have detailed already, their attack. Second best in the league, behind Bayern's, in fact. That Kamada-Muani duo is spicy. Speaking of a great attack, there are few better in Europe than Napoli's, as Spalletti's side are simply outstanding in this moment. Victor Osimhen is one of the best strikers in the world right now, pure strikers, while Kvara is making people forget all about Insigne with every assist and goal he contributes. They have depth in Gio Simeone and Raspadori. Their midfield is fantastic, and their defense is even better. Kim Min-jae, what a guy. I mean, they boast both the best attack and defense in Serie A. Rachmani, shout out. Alex Meret, shout out. He's been great in goal for them. And even with a wobble where they lost to Inter and then Cremonese in the Cup, they have bounced back in style, and their fluid football will be a massive test for Eintracht Frankfurt. Like I said, there are few teams with an attack as good as Napoli's right now, and just in general, there are a few teams that I look to and think, oh yeah, they could easily beat Napoli. While I think this will not be a cakewalk for Napoli, as both Ajax and Liverpool were at times, I see them making it past Eintracht Frankfurt. Leipzig versus Manchester City, a very, very tough one to call. When it was announced that Juventus were being subjected to a point deduction, minus 15 points, there was a clear drop in form from them. It was as if the players were in a rut and couldn't get out of it for a bit. They have since found their form in some ways, but you could ask whether the allegations against City and the uncertainty surrounding the club could cause for a further dip in form from them. And it's not as if they were in astounding form to begin with, as City haven't exactly looked like themselves, have they? Well, I mean, perhaps that's a bit unfair, because looking like themselves would be running away with the league. And to be fair to Arsenal, they've been absolutely incredible this season and have prevented City from doing so. But still, Manchester City still boasts a very, very strong squad, and perhaps the Tottenham loss should be thrown in the bin as far as a clue to their form, because they never win or score any goals at Tottenham Stadium anyway. They are cursed every time they step in that building, man. But all the same, City have won 3 and lost 3 in their last 6 matches, which is very un-City-like. They have lost their last 3 away matches consecutively, and after they play host to Aston Villa this upcoming weekend, they are playing not 1, not 2, but 5 away matches on the trot. From February 15th to the 28th, they won't play a single game at the Etihad. And that's where most of their losses come, is on the road. On top of this, there is seemingly some stirring going on behind the scenes. Perhaps Cancelo was the only player that was at the heart of it, and he has moved on already. Or perhaps there is more to be said of City and what caused Pep Guardiola to speak about missing the fans, to speak about only playing players who want to be out there. We'll have to see. But when you boast players like Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland, you can give anyone trouble still. You cannot rest against City. RB Leipzig would argue that they could do the same, especially when you consider the insane form they're in at the moment. Since Marco Rose has taken over, he has transformed RB Leipzig. Yes, he has tasted defeat, but he hasn't since October 1st, a run of 18 matches without a single loss, 14 wins and 4 draws. He has managed to make up for what his reputation may have lost while he was at Borussia Dortmund, as Rosa has helped turn Konrad Laimer into an even more influential player while striking a chord with Szoboszlai recently as well. RB Leipzig are fairly solid defensively, as they have conceded more than 1 goal on just 3 occasions during this 18-match unbeaten run. Guys like Willy Orban and Josko Gvardiol are shining right now. Special shout out to Klosterman also, as the entire team is performing at a great level at the moment. And if ever there was a time to play against Manchester City, you would think that it would be now. Again, we don't know how fragile they are mentally and whether the players will start to slip under Guardiola with this new pressure or the fear of the unknown surrounding the club. For this reason, I'll go with an extremely competitive matchup with Leipzig, I guess. Hey man, who cares about the predictions anyways, right? It's more about the preview. I'll go with Leipzig. And finally, it's Sergio Conceição's FC Porto taking on his former team, well, a team he played for previously, I should say, in Inter Milan. FC Porto are a team that has established themselves as a team that you can never ever take lightly. No matter what kind of form they may be in domestically, which right now is very good, you cannot sleep on Porto so long as Sergio Conceição is at the helm. They've won 7 matches in a row at the time of recording this, likely to be 8 after their match in the Taça on the 8th of February, and they have continued to stay within touching distance of Benfica, despite Benfica being on that great run that they're on. Porto did well to get out of their group, frustrating Atletico to no end at the end of the group, and Diogo Costa's incredible performances against Bayer Leverkusen helped to propel them through in first place despite starting things off with a 2-1 loss away and a 4-0 loss at home, no less. That is very impressive, as they went on to win the rest of their matches to top their group ahead of Club Brugge. Mehdi Taremi will of course be a headache for Inter's back line, though like FC Porto, Inter have been accumulating clean sheets over the last little while as well. In fact, they got a great 1-0 victory over a very good Atalanta side recently, as well as that dominant 3-0 win over AC Milan in the Supercoppa, and a 1-0 win over Milan this past weekend in Serie A. While Inter aren't necessarily firing at their best all the time these days, they are still finding ways to get decent performances. They refuse to go on a losing slump again. They continue to fight and get results, and Lautaro Martinez is in great form these days following that very smelly World Cup. But hey, I mean, it may have smelled, but he still won the thing. There is some drama for them at the back surrounding Milan Skriniar, but that has seemingly blown over already, now that he spoke to the Curva on why he will be signing for PSG. The midfield, Çalhanoğlu has put in some top performances lately, while Barella is always dangerous. Honestly, this one is very, very difficult to call. Porto can cause a huge upset at any time, really, while Inter is second to only Napoli domestically and finished ahead of Barcelona in their group. This should be a fantastic matchup, and I think that Porto may just upset Inter. Was that a jinx? No, I'd never do that. All right, this video is finally over. I'm sorry. I hope you're looking forward to the return of the Champions League as much as I am. My name is Adrian. We'll do some watch-alongs. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.